This just breaking, the Walt Disney Company appears to be dumping DEI in its latest SEC filings for investors. Is it true though, or maybe a case of woke, smoke, and mirrors? Today, we'll break it down for you and let you know what's really going down at the House of Mouse. Will the new CEO, Josh D'Amaro, turn over a new leaf? Or is this yet another attempt to hide the beef from the federal government? Hello, folks. Welcome back yet again. It is another fantastic day. Every time we get to spend time together, and we are, as ever, uncovering what's really going down behind the closed doors of the House of Mouse. As we get ready to do so, consider clicking the like button, drop a comment, and let's dive into this very fast breaking news that we may have been involved in too. Out of thatparkplace.com, the website that if you're not yet bookmarked to, well, you should be. Marvin Montenaro, the man on the panel right now, has this one. Has Disney ditched DEI? 2026 annual report appears to abandon diversity language after FCC pressure, but is it really gone? There's Bob handing over to Josh, and very interesting that as Josh takes over, suddenly they're rolling over the DEI and sending it elsewhere. The Walt Disney Company's latest proxy filing is raising fresh questions about whether the entertainment giant is quietly backing away from diversity, equity, and inclusion, posture it once promoted so prominently. A close comparison between Disney's 2025 and 2026 proxy statements reveals something striking. Overt diversity language has been noticeably scaled back, even as key inclusion infrastructure inside the company appears to remain firmly in place. So what's really happening inside the House of Mouse? Is Disney abandoning DEI or rebranding it? Before we dive into this, Marvin, there's a connection here because last year you covered what was going, and maybe we should call it this, you uncovered what was going on with compensation packages. I believe this is the way it went. Compensation packages going to the elites in Disney, stale pale Bob Iger, getting money depending on if they hit the racial quotas they had set forth, which are probably illegal. And you wrote about that, and then the U.S. government cited your reporting on this, and that seems to have played a part in whatever's happening this year. So walk us through how we get here before we talk about what here is.
So last year, when Jonas and I dug through the proxy report, you can see a screenshot in the article that we have where it lists it lists the number of skills and competencies that the members of the Disney board has. And one of the skills that they list is diversity. And compensation packages were, kind of put together based on these skills. So they were essentially saying you get a raise if you're diverse, which is illegal, obviously. And so we highlighted that in our article. And then when the FCC cited all of the different ways that that Disney was potentially violating employment equality, they cited us, and you see in the image right there, citation 9, that Park Place article from August 29th.
They love you at Disney, Mar. They just love you so much.
I don't think they do very much.
You're definitely getting a drink named after you at Epcot soon.
But yeah, they cited us in that, and the FCC launched a full investigation into them. And so now what we're seeing in the 2026 report, same report, right? It's the proxy report once again. When they list those key competencies and skills, diversity has been left off of it. Also, all of their talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion that was all throughout the 2025 report is gone. Now, we've also uncovered the fact, so these are the competencies that they list now. You see diversity is not among them. But however, we do state in this article that we found a few things in there that is basically they're trying to hide it now. They're just not being as outward about it. So basically they're trying to hide it now because the FCC is sniffing after them and they know that what they're doing is illegal.
So let's read through these so the people who are listening in only, not watching, know what Disney now lists as core competencies. Missing, of course, diversity, brand stewardship, business development, M&A, corporate responsibility, cybersecurity, DTC expertise, executive management, finance and accounting, global business operations, media and entertainment, risk management, strategic transformation, succession planning, technology and innovation, and no longer is just diversity considered a skill. Okay, so Tabitha, I go to you on this one. What was so fascinating about having diversity ranked as part of, why people should be hired and why executives should be rewarded for hiring people with said skill of diversity is sometimes that diversity simply referred to their bedroom preferences. So we got into a really weird place, Tabitha, where we were actually rewarding Bob Iger for how many of his employees were enjoying the activities of the night in ways that, I guess Disney deemed as more monetarily valuable. How strange. What a weird world we've been through, Tabitha.
I mean, in some corners of the world, marital activities are listed as a skills. So, yeah, to each their own, but it's definitely inappropriate. As people have been saying for years, what you do behind closed doors is your own personal business and has no place in the workforce, like in the work zone. And so the fact that it's especially alarming when this is supposed to be a children and or family company, making this a skill level is very interesting because it doesn't take any skill to be melanated or less melanated. I mean, technically, scientifically speaking, I'm melanated, just not as melanated as other people. And being able to swap spit with anybody you please is also not a skill. It actually could be a harassment, but it's a whole other conversation. But it's just very bizarre to, as we've been saying for years now, that prioritizing what you do in your personal life needs to come and be displayed and catered to and nurtured in the workforce. This is a very bizarre behavior pattern, and hopefully they're seeing that people are, genuinely upset about it and that it's not benefiting the company, and that they're just going to slowly, because it has to be slow, right? They can't just blatantly be like, guys, we realize that we made an oopsie doodle and that this is a bad look for the company. So we're just not going to do this anymore, because that's also going to discriminate, if you will, by their own standards, the people that they did hire strictly out of diversity, whatever that entails for them. So they're going to have to slowly leak this away, whether, like you said, they rebrand it or they just kind of get rid of it entirely. I would probably be more on the lines of rebranding, because you can kind of save face. People with critical thinking skills read in between the lines and be like, well, we know what you're doing. But for obviously the masses, they have no clue what that means. But it's, I think, a better business plan, sort of. But either way.
Well, it's an attempt maybe to comply with the government as well. Yeah. We'll come back to that in just a second. But Andrew, what we found out by the diversity push from Disney and so many other companies was that the C-suite, the executives at the top, were often, they didn't have to follow the rules on this. They're exempt. And so Bob Iger, Josh DeMauro, and all these other pale, stale white guys, they didn't have to comply with any of this. This was only for the underlings. And the fascinating thing with the diversity was, Andrew, what we discovered was, wait a minute. So women are considered diverse, and anything that's not white is considered diverse. The only way for a white dude to be considered diverse was what he did in the bedroom. And then the white guys at the top of the company were being paid extra. They were being paid bonuses if they met the quotas for how many unquote, non-quote, diverse people they have. Why am I saying non-quote, folks? Because I don't believe that it really reflects what diversity is. I think that's a misnomer that they did on purpose. So, Andrew, this was clearly, for right or wrong, folks can debate it. You can say, well, I hate it or I like it, but they were going after white guys. That was the only group that was not diverse.
So going after might be not necessarily the terminology that I would use, but I think what is very accurate is the exclusion. Yes. Right? Whether it's verbalized directly, certainly if they have any sense about them, they wouldn't verbalize that directly. But based on the language they were using, they were absolutely attempting to circumvent, I guess, for lack of a better term, straight white men, right? Like all of the quotas that they wanted to hit had to deal with anything that was not that, right? And that is, by definition, exclusionary, which is ironic if the department is, diversity and inclusion, right? So you are doing the exact opposite. It's always convenient, right, that you just get to exclude one particular group deliberately when you're dealing with the topic of inclusion. That's why the whole inclusion and diversity thing has been asinine from the start, because it's not a real thing, right? Who cares what you look like? Who cares who you sleep with? I certainly don't. Not my business, not my problem. I'm not your real dad. Just base it on meritocracy. That's it. If you're qualified for the position, I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're striped like a zebra. I don't care who you sleep with. If you're qualified for the position, you can do the job better than the other people who applied for it. You get the position. Simple as that. That's how it should always be. there's nothing inherently wrong. Here's the thing. Diversity is something that just is, right? It just exists. It's not something that's a positive or a negative really at the end of the day. Sure, it's nice, I'm sure, for some people to say, oh, look at that. Like their entire company makeup isn't just strictly this particular group of people, right? Like that's whatever. If it's a private company, who cares, right? It's their business. I don't actually care. Do they offer a service or a good that I care about, and do they do it well? Cool. I don't really care who they hire, as long as they're doing their job. And it should be no different in the topic of hiring, right? I do not care about any of that crap. Just do your job, do it well, do it better than the other people that applied for it. And all the other stuff is nonsensical and useless to me.
I will say, I think that Rippaverse, though, to be honest, come on. Do they really hire Andrew for his work ethic or for his majestic hair?
I was about to say it's for the hair, not because I'm good at my job.
Don't think I didn't notice.
I would say hair is a skill.
But I don't get to. If hair's a skill, then Tabitha beats me because her hair looks fantastic right now. When I didn't know that Tabitha was going to be on the show, and then when she popped up on screen, I'm like, oh crap! Well, I don't have best hair on the show this time.
Nope, sorry.
Somewhere there's a bald man that's just thrown his coffee at the screen. I'll tell you. The only thing more dangerous at the Disney company of the past 5 years than being a white straight dude lower than the C-suite was trying to be a dwarf getting a real job on one of the Disney movies. That's the only more prejudiced against group at the Disney company, right, Marv?
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, you definitely couldn't get any job if you were actually, somebody in that group. But to piggyback off what Andrew said, I mean, you're talking about skills and competencies. They had diversity listed in the same vein as cybersecurity training, something that you have to go through like advanced training and certification to actually learn about. Like that's the thing that just boggled my mind.
That's wild.
This is a skill next to actual competencies.
Well, yeah, like I'm sorry, like Tabitha, I love you to itty bitty pieces. You're a wonderful human being, super talented artist, sweet as can be. Lacking a Y chromosome is not a skill.
No, it's, it wasn't by choice either. So,
Yeah. So by definition, like that's what's so ridiculous about that, right? Like, how are you listing diversity as a skill? It's not a skill if you're born a man or a female. It's not a skill if you're Black because your parents were Black. It's not a skill if you're Hispanic because you had either Mexican heritage or something else like Brazilian or in my case, Peruvian, right? Like that's not a skill. That's not something you had to hone, right? You don't do you practice to be a woman? Well, maybe some people try to practice to be a woman, but that's a whole different conversation entirely, right? But that's so ridiculous. How do you list that as a skill and get taken seriously?
I'm going to have to assume that it maybe comes from HR. Right? Like I've heard the horror stories in businesses where HR, they, always having to deal with this and you get called into the office for this because you said something wrong. And it almost like it was an expansion of the HR department where it's like, okay, this, because we are getting softer in our feelings, being triggered by all these things where it's like, oh, we need to branch out and have a whole other arena for people who are offended by skin color and or sexual orientation or whatever. So it's almost like it just exploded into something that it never should have been, where it's like, yeah, you need people to be in charge and have the social skills. I will say the management and the social skills to be able to navigate those types of scenarios are definitely necessary because there are sometimes, when you're because the thing is, at the end of the day, you're meant to be a team when you're in a company. The company's goal is to make money. It's to make a product that will sell. And if the team is not working together, if they are not understanding, then they will fall apart. The team will not be efficient in the production, ergo, it will not make enough money. The problem is that we then took people's personal lives and elevated it beyond work and business and professionalism. We suddenly were like, well, this person's sleeping with so-and-so. We need to cater to them and make them feel comfortable in the workplace. No, you don't. It is by choice what you do at your home. Whether I agree with it or not does not sell a movie, does not sell a toy. That doesn't matter. If you're, like Andrew said, if you're good at your job, then it doesn't matter what your religion, what your creed is. It doesn't matter who you're sleeping with. If you're good at selling a product, that should be why we hire you. And it just seems like the HR department just went and exploded. And now we had to create these whole other departments to compensate for people's feelings.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been, there for the hiring process for Disney over the last, Well, over the years of the Biden administration, wouldn't you have loved to have heard somebody come in and the Disney exec says, we're really looking for a cybersecurity expert. There's so many dangers to our company. We don't want to have our websites taken down. And the person says, okay. They say, well, do you have any cybersecurity expertise? And the person says, no, but I am a pansexual. And the Disney person says, well, what's pansexual mean? I need to know that. And they say, well, I don't know either. They say, well, good enough. You're hired. We don't need cybersecurity. That'll work.
It's an overcorrection is what it is, because, you certainly don't want to go back to a point in history where people were actively excluded based on one criteria or another, right? Because that's not right either. Mm-hmm. But the overcorrection is then saying, well, now we have to hire those people specifically. Yeah. The correction, the proper middle was always, regardless of what the person looks like, regardless of what their religion is, regardless of where they come from, who their parentage is, who they sleep with, any of that. Again, can they do the job? Can they do it better than the other people that applied for it? Cool, easy, done. That is meritocracy eliminates all of the excess on either end of the spectrum, right? It doesn't over-include, and it also doesn't exclude. It's just, were you the best person for the job? Simple. But the overcorrection has landed us in this nonsensical place.
It took us back into a circle, basically. Yeah. The idea of eliminating exclusion brought us and generating inclusion brought us back to exclusion, but just of a different brand.
And it excluded it excluded the larger part of the population, which is where all of this really comes to a head, right? If we're going to come full circle, because when they started advertising that this was the direction they were going to take things, all of us who belong to that larger group of people, right? Whether you like it or not, straight white men, right? Even though white women are a larger part of the population comparatively, well, that's the one that they decided to exclude. And so we all said, well, wait a second. You're saying that this thing is now made or being marketed for everybody but me. And you know what happens when you tell the largest portion of your customer pool, your demographic, that something isn't made for them anymore? You lose the largest portion of your customer demographic. Mm-hmm. And then you start to lose money.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all were really on board, especially like in the 90s, on the concept of like, we want equality, we want hiring equality, we want wage equality, we want all of this. And what we learned as, these things were implemented was what you said, that overcorrection. It was all of a sudden, it wasn't just like, okay, we're all equal now. It's okay, now it's our turn to push you down. Now it's okay and acceptable and expected for certain people to now be excluded from things. Now,
right? Because we got to yank you down, Marvin, to get equity, right? To get equity, it's not enough to lift everybody up to that level. Now we got to start pulling other people down instead for vengeance. But we're not going to call it vengeance.
Yeah, from a writer's perspective, you look for a literary agent right now, and you try to get a literary agent, and they won't even look at your stuff. They'll just say, "Oh, sorry, we're only looking for female POC and LGBT voices right now."
Yep.
And that's discriminatory. Because they don't care how well you can write. They only care, what your preferences are, or what your skin color is, or what your gender is, and that says nothing about whether or not you can write or not. So we're seeing it everywhere. I will say diversity is not a skill. However, being Italian is a skill when you're as good at it as I am.
I mean, to paraphrase Lord of the Rings, the time of the white man is over. The time of the DEI orc is now.
Unless you're at the top.
Orc is right in some cases, yeah.
Unless you're at the top. If you're Bob Iger, you're making extra money off this. The whole thing was cynical from the get-go. Mm-hmm. The other thing, as we get to wrap this particular conversation up, the other thing that happened is that it alters the politics of the company. And ultimately, I think that's the reason, because it's not just that white men stop applying, and it's not just that white men stop being promoted, and it's not just that straight white men stop being given opportunities to put their content out there in favor of others. It's also that all of the other people groups who find that abominable and say, I don't want to work for a company that treats my coworkers that way based on skin color, they stop also going to that company. And over time, it begins to modify the company into being something politically very what would you say? Disconnected from the largesse of America. And that's what happened to Disney. And the problem is that once you do that, you can no longer connect with your audience, because the lived in experience, the bubble from which you're producing this content and this art no longer reflects what anybody else in the country believes in, because now you're not just left coast. You're a very distinct niche of the left coast in who you're hiring and put into your artistry. So final thoughts on that one, folks.
It's all been said.
It's okay to be white.
Thank you, Tabitha.
You're welcome.
No,
I appreciate that.
I'm
It's
white
really intense.
passing. My last name's Rodriguez. I'm white passing. So look at that.
I'm also
That-
white passing.
Does that give me a special
I'm just
a special
white.
pass at Disney? I don't really care. I'd rather go to Harry Potter World anyway.
I'm Sicilian, so I can make a case.
God, he's Sicilian. Here we go again. Here we go again. Folks, remember, though, as we get ready to go on this one, Susan Rice, she came out. She's a former Obama admin, big time in the Democrat Party. She says that any company that decides to bend the knee to the Trump administration, any company that decides to comply, hey, we're looking at you, Disney. They're coming for them if they get back in power. Maybe there's a deal that's been cut behind the scenes. I don't know. Maybe Disney has said, we're not really crying uncle. We're just gonna mess up some stuff. We'll trick them. We'll confuse them. We'll change the names. I don't know. But will vengeance be brought upon the Disney company? Well, that has yet to be seen. But personally, I'm not holding my breath for that one should the left get back in power. I think they'll love Josh tomorrow and love the folks over at the House of Mouse, just like all of this is water under a bridge. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. We are done for now, but don't worry. Do not fret. Not yet, for more content is still coming your way 4 times a day right here on the Pro Channel. What a joy it has been to share our time with you. We hope you feel the same. Adding value to your every single day is our job here, and we take it very seriously. Folks, the only thing we ask in return is that you consider clicking that like button. Share, subscribe, click it. Stick it to those algorithms. It's the notification bell. And drop a comment right on down below. And folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our partner YouTube channels, That Park Place, That Pod Place, That Game Place, and some of those radio stations like Vacation Radio, well, we certainly would appreciate it. Until the next time we have the honor of spending time and being invited into your day, folks, we go on our way saying this: keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.